What's going on, Bulls Nation? Welcome into the CHGO Bulls Podcast, coming to you live from our studios here in West Loop, downtown Chicago. I am Peck, Bulls _ Peck. My guy, Will Gottlieb, Will _ Gottlieb, perfectly qualified. Wow! Our pal producer on the controls, the one and only Kevin Wells.
Fellas,
what up, Kev?
What's happening?
Back-to-back duty after CHGO White Sox.
Big time.
Those guys, you know, just easing into off-season mode. We're easing into season mode.
A lot of pain with those guys.
I mean, can you blame them?
They're talking about all the players that they lost in trades over the last 20, 30 years.
Oh, my God. Why would they do that to themselves?
I don't know. Because Fernando Tatis is on a heater, and they're like, what about? What if?
Oh, man. Yeah. Tigers, 1 win away from the championship series. Good for them. Let's go, Bonetti. Big Dave is jetted off to London to have a wonderful time catching up with the rest of our CHGO crew, CHGO Bears crew out there for the Bears-Jags game taking place on Sunday. Hopefully he has had happy, safe, and knowing Big Dave, comfortable travels. I don't think. Did you ask him how he was flying? Dude, like what are the odds on Big Dave flying first class or not?
I don't ask him about his travels anymore. I give up on that. He likes to keep that stuff private.
Well, sure. No, I was just talking about the amenities of his flight.
There's no way he's not sitting first class.
I think if there was a first class seat available, he did book late. He based on your encouragement, he decided to go to London. Like a week ago?
Yeah. Good for him.
Good for him.
That's all I'll say.
We will miss him while he's gone, but he will have a blast. We will hold down the fort in the meantime. Hope everybody's basking in the gloriousness of the Bulls' victory last night.
Bulls are back.
That's the thing. The Bulls won a game last night.
Are back. Unfortunately, it did not count, or maybe fortunately, it didn't count, depending on how you're looking at it. But
I mean, they put the preseason games in the standings, but then, of course, they just wipe those out and start over come October 23rd when the Bulls start playing games that actually matter. But I think it was still a fun experience to see some of these young guys get a first look at what Giddey was doing in a Bulls jersey, first look at Modest since Summer League action. And then obviously a lot of run for the younger guys, especially in the second half when some of the vets started to get some rest. We got a lot of Julian. We got a lot of Dalen Terry. So before we dive into today's topics, which are the other thing that Bulls fans are keeping an eye on this season, a.k.a. draft stock and draft names, and any lingering thoughts or fresh thoughts you had when you woke up this morning thinking back to last night's game, Will?
I think it's going to just be a process with these guys. And I was thinking a lot this morning just about the difference that, even though most of the roster is the same, the difference in identity that they're going to have on both sides of the ball. So really it's a lot of the same players: Zach, Kobe, Patrick, Ayo, Vooch, Dalen Terry, Julian Phillips, all these guys who were in the lineup last year and played some, or in some cases, a lot of minutes, and have had the same system for the last 3 years, are now having to learn kind of an entire new offense as they adjust to life without DeMar and without Caruso. And so I think it's going to take some time for things to start to look a little bit better to where you're getting more of the fun part of the fun bad. But and then the young players and how they continue to come along here. I think Dalen Terry and Julian Phillips in particular gave some really good minutes. They started the second half. They played a lot. Dalen was great defensively. Julian Phillips, I thought, was one of the more impressive kind of low-key performers last night.
Ran the floor well in transition.
Ran the floor well. He hit a three. Played good defense. He caught a lob from Modest. So there's stuff to work with here. And I think the Bulls, their crop of young players is interesting. I hope it takes time for them to develop, and I hope the Bulls give them that time, because that's what the season should be about.
Yeah.
And then, I think that the Patrick stuff, it's got to be a little bit concerning.
Has to be. I saw our guy Drew Stevens, with a big shout out to him, had a tweet this morning that was like, look, I'm going to give Pat kind of half a pass last night because let's keep in mind did also have season-ending surgery, and even like leading up to training camp, we weren't sure if he was going to be a fully healthy and full participant in training camp, and that was still kind of, unclear. He was out there playing last night, and it just, it didn't necessarily look like he was hampered by an injury or playing through some injury or not 100%. It just looked like the same Patrick Williams.
Yeah. I mean, he just has, like, I don't know, this is harsh to say, but he just like lacks the skills that you need if you want to be the player that he talks about wanting to be.
Yeah.
Like the ball handling isn't there. If you want to be somebody who's a shot creator, you need to be able to handle the ball. And he just struggled to do that. I know it was one play at the very beginning. It's going to stand out, but it's challenging. And, he's also going to have to be asked to be the main guy defensively in that unit too. And like, is that putting him in the best position for him to succeed? I don't know. I mean, as we talked about last night, I don't think any of these guys really are. And then, Ricky and Jason were talking about it on Cash Considerations, which is a great show that I'm sure a lot of people here who are watching us know of, but if not, go check that out. They also were talking about the IO needs to start discussion.
I saw a lot of that on Bulls Twitter between last night and this morning.
Like, I didn't really think that it would come to that right away, but it's like, I mean, yeah, can you really yank Patrick out of the starting lineup? One, after paying him $90 million, and two, after this has happened every single year.
Mm-hmm.
And like, are you really going to go without a power forward now just because you need to get Io in there? Or are you going to pull Zach or Kobe or Giddey? Or like, can you do that having just invested a huge asset into Giddey and presumably about to pay him?
Right. Because there's different problems with contemplating any of those three options. Whether it's like, how do you bench Kobe, given everything? How do you bench Zach, given everything that they're dealing with Zach right now? And how do you bench Giddey, the guy who you just got in a trade, decided he's the guy you wanted, and that's why maybe you didn't get as much in that trade because you didn't have a lot of leverage because that's the guy you want. Okay, player for player swap. And you have to figure out this season if you want to sign him to a multi-year deal for lots and lots of money. It doesn't make sense to bench any of those three guys, but man.
And it's not like a situation where you can say, sorry, Giddey, like you're going to come off the bench and play a smaller role and we're going to try to like depress your value so that you don't get as much money on the open market. Like, you don't want to play it that way because then he's going to walk. And maybe like ultimately that is the best thing for this team, like unfortunately, but that's not why you trade Alex Caruso for this guy who they clearly coveted so much that they wouldn't trade him for multiple picks when they had the opportunity to. And it's not like other teams would be unwilling to throw, like the Nets are going to be a cap space team next year. Like he would be great once you move on from Ben Simmons to like get in a young point guard who can run. That's the kind of guy who they could potentially throw a lot of money at. So if you're going to risk losing him for nothing, a great way to do it is by benching him. And like, I'm not saying that would be like the worst thing in the world as we know, like, I think there are issues with building around him, but that's not why you just go out and trade Alex Caruso for this guy. And so there are like political reasons why Io is not starting right now, but it's very difficult to keep him on the bench if like what they're actually trying to do is win games because he's clearly one of the best players on this team.
As we were kind of talking about in last night's postgame, like if you're talking about best five, like who are your best five to start based on what we know about people who were already here and then our first glimpse last night, Io is in that five. And Giddey might not be, but you can't just decide that in a vacuum as a fan and say put those five out there because of all of the political reasons around why Giddey will almost assuredly be in this team starting lineup all season long.
And then it's like, okay, you don't want to like rub Giddey the wrong way to where he doesn't want to re-sign with you. You can't really do this to Kobe because of all that he's been through, and now you're putting him into an off-guard role, and he's like kind of the one that popped. And you can't do it to Zach to hurt his feelings and put him on the bench because it's going to affect his trade value, and you can't do it to Patrick because you just paid him, and what does that indicate? But it's like, what does this tell Io? Like, you're just going to have to be the one that's off the bench. Like, I don't know that again, I'm not like saying any of this is true, but just like you could see how that would rub somebody the wrong way, or somebody would be frustrated at that. And maybe Io just takes it in stride and he's like, yeah, you know what? This is going to make me better. This is motivation. And that's probably what it is because Io's just that kind of worker. And then, like what happens when we're going to talk about Cooper Flagg today? What happens if you get Cooper Flagg? Who are you putting him in the starting lineup for? And so I think like the Bulls, it's a situation, and I've used this analogy before, but it's like when you have like 2 or 3 quarterbacks, it's like, yeah, you really don't have any quarterbacks. Because if there was really someone, that guy would stand out and put everybody else into their place. And so I think the bigger question here is like, yes, the Bulls have some interesting pieces And we're going to loop all this discussion into the BPI stuff and the Cooper Flagg stuff, but it's like, what are they actually trying to do here? And I know it's difficult when you can't move on from Zach LaVine, you can't move on from Vooch, but this situation still is very undone. It's not finished. And as AK said at Media Day, this is not a finished product.
Yeah.
But you're feeling where that can potentially cause some problems.
Yeah. Speaking of, you can't move on from Zach, you can't move on from Vooch. So the scrolls in the comments
going
saying,
in today.
Reinsdorf in this, wait, hold on. No, it was something else that he said. Oh, LaVine, Vooch, and Pat Williams should all be gone for draft picks. When you say should all be gone for draft picks, you mean that the Bulls trade those guys and send with them some of the Bulls' own draft picks? Because if you're talking about trading all three of those guys and getting draft picks back for them right now, then please wake up and join the rest of us in reality, won't you?
Going to need to find the Carolina Panthers of the NBA.
Yeah.
Ain't going to do that.
Carolina Panthers. You want these guys? Let's get Ryan Poles on the phone on behalf of the Bulls, see if he can work some magic. Okay, so speaking of this young group of players who we got a glimpse at last night, and we will continue to watch this season, let's dive into this BPI stuff that dropped. For those who aren't familiar, BPI stands for Basketball Power Index, and it is a analytic system invented by ESPN's NBA nerds, and it is a measure of team strength developed by ESPN Analytics team, meant to be the best predictor of a team's performance for the rest of the season, which right now would be the entirety of the season on deck. BPI represents how many points above or below average a team is. BPI accounts for game-by-game efficiency, strength of schedule, pace, days of rest, game location, and preseason expectations. So, essentially, when you are talking about this BPI number, for example, if you have that chart that you want to throw up there, Kev, of where the 30 NBA teams stand, thank you, Kev. Celtics projected to have the best BPI at, plus 4 point something, plus 4.2. The Wizards, projected to be the worst team in the league, have a BPI of negative 7.5. For context, the Bulls, 21st, with a BPI of negative 1.0. So kind of top of the bottom third, which is where you don't want to be if you're a team talking about,
and coincidentally, where the Bulls always seem to find
young
themselves.
players and rebuilding with young talent. Exactly. So when you convert those BPIs to projected win-loss record, you see the Celtics there projected to have 56 wins to 26 losses. Bulls down towards the bottom of this chart, 38.2 wins and 43.8 losses is the BPI-based projection of their record this season. Now, I saw that when you sent it to me this morning, Goat, and said, how?
Huh?
How did they get that number? How did they get that number? Because that is, correct me if I'm wrong, what was the Bulls' record this past season?
39-43.
39-43. They're projecting basically an identical record this season with DeMar gone, Caruso gone, Drummond gone, Giddey, Modis in, Jalen Smith in. But those are your roster changes. That is very, very intriguing to me.
Yeah, and I mean, look, this team, like, I'm pulling up the numbers now, but DeRozan, you mentioned, was worth 9 wins via estimated plus minus.
9 times.
He was first on the team. Caruso, worth 7.6 wins via EPM, second on the team. Drummond, worth 3.1 wins, sixth on the team, and third or fourth if you remove Zach and Javonte Green, who were ahead of him, who barely played. Yes, you are putting Zach back into the lineup for presumably the whole year. You add Giddey, you add Patrick Williams back, who missed a lot of time, and then Jalen Smith. But even if you are looking at this in the most rosy way and saying Zach is going to have 10.7 wins, which is what he was worth the year before, which is even more than DeRozan. I don't think he's necessarily going to get to that point, but if he does, and Giddey adds as much value as he did, that's 3.8 wins. Patrick adds 2.5, and Jalen Smith adds 3.4, which is all what they projected last year. That's 19.7 wins out and 16.5 in, which is 3.2 fewer wins. So that's like just the baseline. And to me, as we've talked about, I think that those guys are actually worth maybe that much individually, but when you factor in the way that they helped some of the other guys get better around them, and now how I think they're going to struggle on both ends of the court without those guys, like it could be even more than that. And so to me, and I know I've said this before, but like the bottom was always going to fall out without DeMar on the offensive end. The bottom was always going to fall out without Caruso on the defensive end. You're not replacing these guys with people that, you know, they're good players. And like, I think I'm higher on Zach than most everybody else seems to be. And I'm higher on Giddey than most everybody else seems to be. But like, those guys don't impact the game the way that DeMar and Caruso do. They just don't. And so I don't really see how you could factor that in. Now, some of that...
You know what? Hold that thought, and then we'll take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll pick up this BPI conversation on the other side. Today's show brought to you by Coors Light, y'all. Between work, social media, worrying about the Bulls' BPI projections, and other things life throw our way, it's no wonder we can get more worked up, a little stressed out sometimes. Coors Light celebrates rising above those moments and choosing a chill mindset. Why not turn a rained-out barbecue into the Will to Go Gottlieb karaoke house party? Attended, of course, by Kevin Wells. Kev, wow. what's your karaoke song?
Probably some Green Day. So I don't know.
Green Day?
I've done karaoke once in my life. Let me get back to you on that.
Let's go back to it. But Green Day, you can bring the house down with a Green Day song karaoke style.
Give us some karaoke song options in the comments, please.
There you go. Or after a tough loss, settle the score with an ice cold peace offering. Make the choice to choose chill, and then reach for a Coors Light. It's mountain cold refreshment. The mountains turn blue. You know that beer inside is cold as the Rockies and ready to drink. Coors Light is cold lagered, cold filtered, and cold packaged for a smoother finish. Coors Light is mountain cold refreshment, crisp and refreshing as the Colorado Rockies themselves. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/CHGO Basketball. That's CoorsLight.com/CHGO Basketball. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado.
I sang Sweet Child of Mine at Trader Todd's.
GNR. Always love some GNR.
Yeah, I think that's
Trader
the only time
Todd's.
I've ever done it in my life. Yeah, Trader Todd's, Sheffield and Belmont. Don't check it out. Don't do it.
What a place for the youths.
What a place indeed. And as the temperature gets a little bit cooler here, the days are getting a little bit shorter, the warmer days are behind us, but you can fuel up for fall with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. Meet your wellness goals thanks to the menu of the chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. So no matter how busy you are, you will always have time to enjoy nutritious and great tasting meals. They have 35 different meal options and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week, so you will always have new and fun and flavorful flavors to explore. Crush your wellness goals this month with dietitian-approved meals and ingredients that you can trust. Make your day delicious from breakfast to dessert. They've got options to stay fueled with easy and nutritious meals. Treat yourself to restaurant-quality meals that feature premium ingredients like filet mignon, shrimp, and blackened salmon for Big Dave. Keep kitchen time to a minimum. Factor meals are ready in 2 minutes. No shopping, no prepping, no cooking, or cleaning up. And we can say from experience, they've sent us some meals. They are delicious.
Delicious.
We love them. So head to factormeals.com/CHGO Bulls50 and use code CHGO Bulls50 for 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code CHGO Bulls50 at factormeals.com to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active.
You just know that Big Dave requested some blackened salmon on that flight.
I'm sure
in-flight meal.
Yeah, like he's sitting first class. The stewardess comes up to him, asks him what meal he wants. He's going with the blackened salmon.
Yeah. Well, let me get your list of reds.
How many Coors Lights could Big Dave have? What's the flight to London? 6 hours?
6 to 7, depending on headwind or tailwind. How many Coors Lights could he drink in one flight?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
24. He could drink a case.
There's an Always Sunny about this.
I mean,
yeah, the Wade Boggs episode. Yeah, it's great.
Wait, who in the Sunny cast? Who in the gang?
Is it 50? Is the number they try to get to? I can't remember, man. This has been a
no.
long
They
time,
try to get to the. They tried to get to. Wade Boggs drank 70 beers on a cross country flight and ate a whole chicken or whatever. That was
so they all tried
that was the myth, and they almost got to it.
They're keeping tally on these white T-shirts and just doing.
Yeah, no, I could confidently say that if he felt like it, Big Dave could take down a 24 rack of Coors Lights on a 7-hour flight. Easy.
My
Easy.
strongest memory or image of Dave in my mind is when we were in Paris and we were
a bottle of wine.
We were wrapping up. It was our last day. It was the morning. We were heading back to the airport to come home. Dave was out literally all night.
All night.
He didn't come back to the Airbnb where we were staying. He was like at some jazz clubs or doing who knows what.
Doing Big Dave stuff.
He gets back into the hotel room after we all wake up. I think he was like waiting outside for us to wake up. And he just comes back and we're like cleaning up a little bit. And he just takes a bottle of wine that like maybe had just been opened and like somebody took a sip out of it.
Like a half a glass had been
it was like
poured out of it the
full,
night before.
And he just downed it in like 2 seconds.
Whole thing.
And then we just got on in an Uber to the airport.
Wow. He's special, man.
He is one of one.
One of the few people I know who can drink me under the table. It is a short list of people who can outdrink me. Big Dave is one of them.
I didn't know he was that wild of a cat.
Oh, yeah. He only,
he has got that dog in him.
Wow.
That's he unleashes it only from time to time, but he does have that dog in him.
I hope I'm lucky enough to see it.
When he wants to get after it, he gets after it.
It's a sight to behold. Okay, so getting back on track, I see a lot of people in the comments, Will, and I think asking quite fairly about these BPI numbers and how they work. Somebody saying, Rig Ski Man saying, wait, so how the heck are the Knicks so far down on this list? And Miami Heat, somebody else pointing out, way too high. Like, if you look, if you want to throw that list of BPI's win projections back up for a second, Kev, like the Knicks and Pacers, the two teams that were, vying to play the Celtics in the conference finals in the East, are projected there around 40 wins, whereas, you got Cleveland all the way up there at 47. I think a lot of people expect the Cavs to be a really good team this year, but like, why are some of these teams are where they are in these projections? And I think it's a fair question when you, like, we gave you all the parameters of what it goes into building these BPI numbers. It's weird where some of this ended up.
Yeah, Timberwolves just traded Cat, and they're at 46. That's interesting. I mean,
well, and you look at like the Pacers, and I think the Pacers, the Magic, and the Knicks are all, bunched up right above the Bulls. And I think we're all kind of thinking about those teams as being like competing for top 4 spots in the East. So it is a data point. It is not like, obviously all the sports books are projecting the Bulls to be 27.5 right now. And so this is obviously coming in much higher, but other teams are coming in much lower. And that's kind of how the math works. Like it's not like you can just say this team's going to win X amount of games. It's like there's a set number of wins and losses that all these teams can have together. There's 82 games for 30 teams. The math has to work out there. And so for some teams to be a little bit below what you'd expect, some teams are going to be a little bit above and so on. But yeah, I just think when you look at, and they even mentioned this, I think you brought it up at the top, like Dean Oliver, who's like kind of the godfather of basketball analytics. He's the creator of the 4 factors, which we talk about all the time.
Yeah, he did a write-up like alongside the release of these BPI numbers.
Exactly. And so we talked about it. And one of the things that he says is a shortcoming with this is that you can't really like read the mind of teams. Are they going to sell? Are they going to, go for the bottom? And so this is really just looking at like the talent that they have now on these rosters. And it's hard to foresee injuries. It's hard to foresee the decisions that teams are going to make in 2-3 months time. So a lot of this is taken with a grain of salt, and I believe it updates over the course of the year. But yeah, to me, like the context of it is what's interesting, and like where you place the Bulls relative to some of these other teams ahead of the Hornets and Hawks and Raptors and Nets and Pistons and Wizards in the East. And yeah, I mean, where does that leave them in terms of the draft and potentially keeping or losing their pick?
That's a question that makes me squirm. I don't like it. But yeah, you mentioned Oliver and his write-up. He said, no matter how smart the BPI is, it can't read the minds of the Bulls organization, especially in the months before such decisions about maybe even further steering towards a youth movement and managing to trade off some of these vet pieces. Before decisions like that are likely to be made. But for right now, it sees the Bulls with about a 20% chance of being among the bottom 6 teams, but it also sees the Bulls at just under 20%, 19.6, I believe to be exact, of being a top 6 team in the East, which like to me,
I couldn't even tell you what their path to that is.
Exactly. But like we know what their path is. They told us all of the things that go into this. It's how many points above or below average a team is, game efficiency, strength of schedule, pace of play, days of rest, game location, preseason expectations. So maybe after preseason, we will get updated BPI numbers that maybe make a little bit more sense to most of us watching the Bulls and along the lines of what we're expecting from them. But Oliver said, and it was, kind of a funny little joke in his write-up, Chicago is in this precarious position. If the Bulls are on pace for their usual 35 to 39 wins around the All-Star break, and again, they are smack dab in the middle of that right now with these initial BPI numbers to begin the season at 38.2. It is odd to me. It is very odd to me. And he did also, like you mentioned, the shortcomings of the system so far, but he also talked about the ways in which this BPI analytics has evolved in recent years. Talked about how it's been constructed and modified over several years and has the most sophisticated algorithm that he's ever seen for a power rating for teams. The new and improved version looked at past seasons to learn from those past seasons, and it rates teams at varying levels of player availability, and it replicates the general trend of increasing offense through the years. Its projection of a team's chance to win a game in light of player availability is also quite intricate. So is that saying that it takes into account like predicting player injuries?
I think it's like general trends based on health history, but I mean that it's so hard to predict that stuff.
Yeah.
That's just, I mean, like there are guys that are injury prone that miss time every year that you can kind of bake that into their thing. And I think like guys like Caruso, you can bake in time that he's going to miss, and DeMar, you're going to be able to predict him to play a lot.
Right.
So, but like, yeah, I mean, even like Kobe had a year last year where he played almost every game, but he had shoulder surgery the year before and missed some time at the start of the season. Patrick played 82 games 2 years ago and missed half the season this year. So that stuff I think is just so subject to change. But with that being said, Giddey is a guy who has not really missed a lot of time in his career. Vooch is a guy that you can rely on to play games. So maybe that's part of it. But yeah, I mean, you still have Lonzo. Zach could be hit or miss in terms of injuries. Like he played 77 games 2 years ago, and then obviously only 25 last year. I mentioned Pat, Kobe, all these guys. It's like, who knows what's going to happen? So to me, I think it just goes to show that like some of these numbers for over-unders on the betting lines are just so low or so high, because that's like the social psychological element of it, where it's like, yeah, we think the Celtics are going to be really good, so they must have, a line that's 60 wins. But like historically speaking, not that many teams win 60 games every year. And, historically speaking, having a line at 19 for the Detroit Pistons or for the Brooklyn Nets is like way lower than what you would expect for a lot of teams, even if they are going for the bottom. And so I think it's just, again, another data point that can kind of pull numbers maybe closer or further away from what the general consensus might think about something. And in that case, I think, we've all been talking about the Bulls being this like mid to high 20s win team. And maybe now this is just an indicator that maybe we should move that number up a little bit more into the low 30s.
Yeah, Adrian Mask in the comments saying, so the Grizzlies might be a 50-win team this year, but because of the Ja situation last year, are we saying that this BPI model says they won't be good at all? Very confusing. Well, so actually, this initial BPI spreadsheet has the Grizzlies as the team with the 10th best record at 44.5 wins. So, I don't necessarily think it's about, well, this player had this specific injury last season and missed a bunch of games, and so people kind of forgot about the Grizzlies. No, like, these numbers are showing the Grizzlies project to be a top third team in the NBA. So maybe it's more of along the lines of what you were saying, which is like players' specific trends of availability versus inavailability and how they manage to in some way bake that into the other elements of these BPI projections. We're going to take one more quick break. When we'll come back, we will transition this BPI talk into NBA draft lottery talk, because also yesterday Jonathan Givony released his new top 100 of the 25 NBA draft class.
Mr. Wells,
could
you please inform me what time it is?
Goat, it is game time.
We were looking for Hoot.
He's throwing it back.
I was throwing it to you.
I'm sorry. I didn't see the pass.
We're trying to do the 3-man lead.
It's game time.
Game time. Hoot. right.
I was staring off into space, waiting to hear the hoot, and I was not looking at my teammate. That's on me. That's on me, Kev.
I just love how respectfully
he even pointed from behind the. He pointed from behind the camera. We all know about Game Time.
That was a Torrey Craig, Andre Drummond moment right there.
Game Time is the fastest and easiest way to get tickets, but did you know they also have a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. It makes curation so much easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. You can check out all-in pricing. Toggling this feature allows the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. They have great seat views, as we know. Get a panoramic view of your seat by just clicking into the app and taking a look before you even buy the tickets. They also have the lowest prices guaranteed, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Game Time ticket coverage, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CHGO for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code CHGO for $20 off your first ticket. Download Game Time today. What time is it, Kevin Wells?
It's game time.
One more time.
It's game time.
There it is.
Woo!
Doubles.
Second time's a charm.
Download Game Time today. Oh, miss you, Dave. Today's show also brought to you by Shady Rays. The people never understood. Get ready for the fall season ahead. The temps might be dropping, but man, was it sunny in Chicago today. A beautiful fall day. Get ready for that beautiful Chicago fall with quality shades that are built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company offering a world-class product rated 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Their shades have durable frames, crystal clear optics, making them perfect for your indoor and outdoor advenciones. They have hundreds of options to choose from, so if you're bound to find the perfect pair to match your style. They probably even have a style and color that matches your favorite sports team. Plus, if your shades ever go missing, take an unexpected hit, coming from someone who knows, don't sweat it. They have the most insanely amazing protection in all of eyewear. Every pair is backed by that Shady Rays lost or broken replacement plan. I have used it. I have used it several times. It works. It's not made up. Replacement glasses in your mailbox, like literally a week after you file with them saying, hey, I lost or broke my pair. I need another one. Incredible service. Exclusively to our CHGO Bulls listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com and use promo code CHGO to get 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people.
5 stars.
5 stars. Because of Shady Rays, y'all, where the Rays are oh so damn shady. All right, GOAT, moving right along.
Wait, shout out to Riggs. He says, I live in Florida now. It may be windy and raining, but I got to have my CHGO Bulls.
Hey, shout out to you, Riggs.
I hope you're safe.
Hope you are safe wherever in Florida you are.
Seriously.
People who are regular listeners to this show know that I like to tease the entire state of Florida from time to time for, well, being Florida reasons. But all jokes aside, hoping everyone down there as Hurricane Milton is barreling towards y'all are safe, evacuated if you need to, or otherwise safely at home and locked in and hunkered down with plenty of rations, plenty of supplies, plenty of Coors Light. What's the one thing if you had to? I mean, in Chicago we don't really have to deal with that all that much. But if you were like, there's a hurricane coming through, we might be stuck inside for a day, maybe 2. What's the one thing that you would be like, I need to have this?
Factor meal kit.
Factor meal kits is a good answer. Factor meal kits and a few cases of Coors Light. Yeah.
Company man.
There you go. And then obviously a functioning TV. Hopefully the power doesn't go out. If the power goes out, I don't know, maybe a good book, flashlights,
an antenna,
so you can watch your CHSN programming.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, what century are we living in? Okay, so moving through this this BPI stuff and the fact that at least out of the gate, the Bulls' number of projected wins via BPI is maybe a bit higher than most Bulls fans would have anticipated, as in the same number of wins they had last year, or 0.8 wins shy of the win total they had last year. That then begs the question, and you kind of highlighted some of the teams ranked below them just a minute ago, Goat, especially some of these teams in the East that the Bulls will play several times this upcoming season. Charlotte, Atlanta, Toronto, Brooklyn, Detroit, and Washington. That is a lot of teams in the Bulls conference that are projected to be about the same or worse than them. Some people I saw in the comments saying, hey, like the Hawks are going to be better than that, and they very well might be. But the Hawks, I think, are kind of always a crapshoot team that is going to end up in the middle because that's who the Atlanta Hawks are. I'm not disrespecting that one run they made to the conference finals a few years ago. I give most of the credit to that to Ben Simmons and that choke job. But, like, it is conceivable that the Bulls, with their youth and their high-paced offense and whatever else, and maybe some teams take some hits here and there, like, it's conceivable that the Bulls end up not at the bottom or even in the bottom three of the East because of the strength of some of these Eastern Conference teams will.
Yeah, I don't think they will. And, you know, one of the things that BPI is looking at here is like the offensive BPI and the defensive BPI. And I think that's, if you isolate it down to their defensive BPI, which is only at 0.05, which is like around bottom 10. I'm not going to count it here, but around there, like to me, and what we saw last night, I think verifies my feeling on this. They're going to be much worse than that. Like they are going to be, I think, down there with the minus 3.3 defensive BPI, Washington Wizards, the minus 2.2 BPI, defensive BPI, Utah Jazz, and Atlanta Hawks. I was
surprised to not see the Bulls in that, you know, worst team, 5 worst teams defensively that Oliver put in his write-up.
I just think they're really going to struggle on that end. And when you are giving up baskets, it prevents you from getting out in transition, which is, I think, something that the Bulls really want to prioritize. And then you don't have DeRozan to really set things up and orchestrate them on the offensive end. And so now you're in a situation where you're asking guys who are not as good as him to create efficient offense, and they're not capable of doing that yet, as we saw with Patrick or whoever else it may be. Not to single anybody out, but like, just the reality of the situation is they don't have somebody who can do that. And I think those two sides of the court blend together in that way. And that's just going to be different. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's a world where they are not as bad as the like 20, I picked them for 27 wins on Dunked On. Like, I think that's probably around the range where I think they'll end up. But I think
most Vegas odds makers right now have them somewhere between like 27.5 wins, 29.5 wins. Maybe I've seen one or two that have them at 30.5, but like that's the range.
Yeah. And I think like 32 is probably like where they cap out in my mind. I would probably pick a little bit lower because I think they're going to try to trend a little bit lower, but 38, 39 is just way higher than I would have expected.
Yeah. So the focus this season, and I don't care what AK says to avoid getting fined or investigated. The focus of this season is young player development. Like, full stop, plain and simple, that's what it is. More so than we're going to go chase a playoff seed and a playoff run, realistically speaking. Simultaneously to that, and again, AK will never acknowledge this publicly because he can't, the focus needs to be and should be, and I think is, secretively, protecting this top 10 protected pick they have with a record that allows them the best chance odds-wise at keeping that pick, and in an ideal world, and at least this Bulls fan's perspective, being one of those 3 teams that have, 14% in the NBA draft lottery next spring.
Yeah, and okay, the way that the lottery odds work now, like being at the very bottom doesn't guarantee you anything. It's 14%, as you said, for the bottom 3 seeds. So if you are the worst record, if you are the second worst record, if you are the third worst record, you have 14% chance to win the lottery. That means that for all these teams, like it's more likely than not that they will not only end up not getting the number 1 pick, but like the Pistons, as we saw last year and the year before, went from the worst team in the league to the 5th overall pick.
Right.
That happens.
Falling back because some team behind you jumps up, aka Atlanta Hawks.
However, the key here is keeping the pick, right? And so the way you do that is you don't move back. And so I don't think the Bulls are going to be in a situation where they're like the 11th worst team. I think they are going to be in the bottom 10 in terms of record this year, but teams can jump up. We saw this happen with the Hawks this year where they jumped from 10 to 1. that doesn't necessarily mean that, okay, the Bulls could finish anywhere and they could still have a chance. That's true. It's a very small chance. The Hawks had a 3% chance of winning the lottery last year, and they did. But it's more about moving back, because I think it's very easy to recall, oh yeah, the Hawks jumped from 10 to 1, and easy to forget that the Pistons went from 1 to 5, and the Hornets went from 3 to 6. And, you know, the Spurs dropped back, and all these other teams dropped back because the other teams moved up.
Right.
And so that is, I think, the biggest fear. The way that you guarantee keeping your pick here is by getting the 6th record or worse in the league. That way you cannot fall.
You cannot fall that many spots to where it's the 11th pick and you have to send it to the Spurs.
So they have to guarantee themselves to be one of the six worst teams in the league this year. I think that's the only way to guarantee you keep your pick. But now you're talking about, okay, well, what's the best chance of actually like getting the franchise player? Because at the end of the day, that's really what this is about. It's nice to collect a bunch of good young players. Like Modest is awesome. I think he's going to have a good year, and maybe he turns into a star player. Kobe, same thing. Like he's taken a leap. He's obviously great, but like he's not a superstar player yet. Same thing with Patrick. Same thing with, you know, Io. All these guys are like good players. They're very good players. In some cases, they're good starters. But at the end of the day, if you want to win championships, and AK said at the end of last season that he did, he said he wanted to win a championship. He wanted to add 10 wins and be a 50-win team. He said he wanted to compete for titles. The way to do that is by getting a star player. And the best way to do that is by winning the draft lottery. And the best way to do that is to put yourself in the best position to do that. Give yourself the best odds. And so to me, like, I think they are towing the line a little bit more than I would want. Like,
yes,
the way, in my opinion, to build a roster is you start with the star player. It's the hardest thing to find in basketball. Once you have that, you can start building. If you don't have that, everything needs to be about finding that. And so to me, they are cutting it a little bit close. You know, and then you have the question of like, okay, well, what happens once you get the star player? If you're the Washington Wizards and you have absolutely nothing right now, if you win Cooper Flagg, then you're going to have to build around him for the next 2 to 3 years in the draft lottery and be in there anyway.
Yeah.
And so would you rather have, you know, a 14% chance of winning the lottery plus nothing around him? Or would you rather have a 7.5% chance and infrastructure of good young players that you can build with moving forward? I get that. I get that argument. The difference is, though, that you're still giving yourself not as high a chance to win the lottery and get the guy, which at the end of the day, like I said, is the most important thing. And so, especially when you're in a draft like this one with Cooper Flagg at the top, who we can talk about here now, that has to be the priority. And I think it will be for a lot of these other teams. And so when you're looking at BPI and projections and the way that things are going to break down, I think a lot of it comes down to like who is most aggressive in going towards the bottom. And historically speaking, we have not seen the Bulls do that.
Right.
We have not seen them take that seriously.
Nope.
And if ever there was a time to do it, this is the year.
Exactly. You know, I'm sure I'm not the only Bulls fan right now having PTSD flashbacks to Niko Mirotic and a bunch of nobodies leading the Bulls on a 7-game win streak in the spring of, what was that, 2018, when the team clearly, after the Jimmy Butler trade, was like, okay, we got a couple young pieces in this trade for Jimmy, but we need to accumulate some more young talent, and the best way to do that is the draft. And they killed 7, 8, 9% odds in the draft lottery with a meaningless 7-game win streak at the end of a losing season. And like I think it's fair for myself or any Bulls fans out there to be terrified of something similar happening, because the Bulls, as a franchise, as you just pointed out, will have never been a team that's like, look, we know what the rules are, but we can find our creative ways to like wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We're not losing on purpose. We're not. We're going to go out there and try and win every night. But I am afraid of them skating on thin ice when it comes to those margins that you were just laying out as far as where they need to be lottery-wise to make sure that pick does not end up in the pocket of the San Antonio Spurs. Because that would be worst-case scenario with all of the other context of where this team and where this roster is right now.
Yeah, and you just brought it up with the Spurs. For those of you that don't know, and there's a great question in our comments right now from Adrian. If the Bulls win the lottery this year, do they automatically convey the pick next year? In a hypothetical situation where they win the lottery, how do they build this team up? Especially if the Bulls have to make an aggressive push for the bottom while selling some of their young talent as well. So the way that it works is this year, and actually Dean Oliver got this wrong in his write-up here, it's top 10 protected. So if it falls inside the top 10, meaning 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10, the Bulls get to keep it. If it is 11 or worse, that goes to the Spurs. And then it's extinguished. However, if it falls inside the top 10 and they keep it, then next year it's top 8 protected. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, the Bulls get to keep it. 9, 10, 11, 12, and so on, the Spurs would get it. And that same thing happens again in 2027, or I guess it would be the 2028 draft. No, 2027 draft.
7.
And so, like, I've heard people talk about, well, you're going to give up that pick eventually. What's the difference if it happens now versus in 2027? The difference is you will have wasted this year and next year and not gotten those players on your roster to where you can start building and then have to go through that whole tanking process again in two or three more years. So, like,
and simultaneously figure out what do we want to do with Kobe? What do we want to do with Ayo? What do we want to do with some of these other young players who are, on the ends of their rookie deals?
Exactly. And I think that's a really good point. It's like you have to have a bigger picture plan of not only your roster and your cap sheet, but what kind of talent you can put around them and how you're going to be able to do that. And so, yeah, the question is, like, really, I think they should be doing like an all-out blitz for the bottom for this year and next year. There's a very good class of players in the 2026 draft, headlined by Cameron Boozer and AJ DeBansta.
Booze.
Like, those guys are also going to be franchise-changing players that would be competing to be the number 1 pick in this year's draft, even with Cooper Flagg. So this is like the year to do that, because if you're talking about developing a team beyond that, it's like you need to have multiple, like, look at some of these other teams that are out there competing. It's like you have multiple all-NBA players, multiple all-stars, multiple top 20 players in the league on the same roster. And the Bulls have no way to accumulate those guys outside of getting lucky in the draft. How do you get lucky in the draft? You put yourself in a position to get lucky. And so to me, like, it's got to be about that. And I know the Bulls are putting themselves in a position to keep their pick, but like, if you end up this year with the 9th pick, this is going to be a good draft. Maybe you get a good player, but like, are you getting that star player? And are you getting that player that can be the number 1 guy that puts everybody else in their place? Like, probably not. It's unlikely. And so, yes, it's possible. Like, good players have been drafted 9 before, but to me, it's like, if you want that superstar player because you want to win championships, you have to put yourself in the best position possible.
Yeah.
And maybe that even includes like trading some of the good young players that you have on, because ultimately you need to be asking yourself the question of like, who is going to be on this roster when you have the next Bulls team that's ready to compete for a championship. It's not going to be Kobe or Ayo on these great contracts. It might be Kobe and Ayo on big contracts, big extensions that they get in 2 years, but it's not going to be them on these contracts. And so how do you justify paying those guys a ton of money to like keep you slightly above the bottom? Like, I don't know how you can do that unless you have these like superstar, unless you get Flagg and DeBansta or something in the next few drafts.
Yeah, exactly. And, I saw Fish and probably a few others saying something along the lines of like, hey, it's not like we need the number 1 pick in Cooper Flagg. As you were just pointing out, Will, 2025 draft class is stacked with a lot of good talent. You've got the Rutgers guys, Harper and Ace Bailey. You've got Edgecombe over there in Baylor. Like, the Bulls can get themselves a great player if they keep this top 10 protected pick, even if it's not Cooper Flagg and the number 1 pick. But to me, what would be malpractice, even though they're not allowed to publicly say it, it would be malpractice and a fireable offense if they are not in that bottom 6, as you laid out earlier. Because what is the reason for allowing even any non-0% risk to convey that pick to San Antonio this year? It makes no sense to take that risk.
For what? A couple of extra wins
for what?
In February?
For what?
It's like, that's a great point.
For what?
It doesn't, and I think
they can be as tight-lipped about it as they want, but there is no excusable reason for them to not be doing everything they can to finish in the bottom 6 this year, because that mathematically eliminates any chance that they have to send that pick to the Spurs. And that should be a priority.
100%. And like, again, the reason we're talking about this here is because in the past they have skated around that. They gave up the 11th pick to the Magic in 2023.
Had to go for that play-in, baby.
When they had to go for the play-in. They had a top 4 protected pick going to the Spurs that year, and they could have gone all out to try to keep that. And maybe it would have worked, maybe not, but like, at least you would have set yourself on the path and given yourself a chance to get Wembanyama, who would be that guy that you can move forward with. It's like very difficult for for you to move towards something if you don't have the foundational piece that can get you there.
Yeah.
And so all this time waiting around or going like halfway in, 1 foot in the door towards that, this is how you set yourself up to be stuck in the middle.
Yeah.
And
so
why would you wait any longer too, by the way? Like, this is the draft where you want
these next two.
Yeah, but specifically like this one.
Yeah.
Cooper Flagg is like, he's the truth, man. Like, why you shouldn't screw around with it. Go get him. Bottom out. And I know that they don't want to operate that way, but you're right. Why wait? There's no point.
Bulls can't do that.
Like, this is going to be a hard season regardless. The extra 2 wins, 3 wins that are going to cost you ping pong balls are not worth it.
Right.
In the grand scheme of things. And so having that sort of vision, and you do give the Bulls credit for understanding the situation enough to position themselves to have a really bad defense and to not be in a situation where they're competing for necessarily the play-in. Who knows how this thing actually shakes out, but that is the position that they put themselves in, and they do deserve some credit for that. However, if it were up to me, I would be going a lot harder in that direction because of what's at stake. And so, like, to me, you can talk about this in terms of losing the pick or not, but like, I don't want the Bulls to get the 9th pick. I want them to get the 1st pick because that's where they need to be if they're going to actually move forward.
Yeah. And speaking of that 1st pick, let's talk a little Cooper Flagg now, because along with these ESPN BPI projections earlier today, Jonathan Givony of ESPN put out his most freshly updated top 100 for this 2025 NBA draft class. And surprise or no surprise, more accurately, Cooper Flagg, Duke, is number 1 on that list. Still not even 18 years of age as he enters his first season with Duke. The 6'9" forward has turned a lot of heads throughout his high school career, and then even more recently than that, some of these initial practices that Duke is getting, that Duke has gearing up for their college basketball season that's right around the corner. And then the thing that Givony also mentioned in his little write-up that you see there is that what people saw, and by people I mean NBA scouts, NBA executives, saw at some of those practices and scrimmages when the USA select team was playing against the USA men's national team, getting them ready to go to Paris and play in the Olympics, that like jaws were on the floor watching Cooper Flagg in those practices, Will.
Yeah, Adrian asking a good question about the scouting report on Cooper. I've heard people like Ace Bailey and other players excel, and I think it's more about what the team needs. I think the big selling point with Cooper, and I haven't watched a ton of film on him yet, but I think he is a very special defensive prospect. And obviously you say, okay, great. Well, we just had Wembanyama, and like, how much of a difference maker can he be as a wing? I think that's what makes him special, is that he is a like 6'10", athletic, rangy, switchable, rim protecting, perimeter guarding forward that can guard 1 through 5. Like, he is a very special elite defensive prospect. I think he's going to be incredible on that end from day one. And so I think that automatically catapults you towards the top. And then on top of it, we've seen him really progress as a shooter. His jump shot form is like a little wonky, but like his shot creation has gotten a lot better. He can drive. He's an incredible athlete. He can like rim roll and catch lobs. He can create off the bounce. He shot well off the dribble in some of these scrimmages that, people are raving about him. So I just think he's like a very versatile offensive weapon. And then like, he's going to be like an all league defender for the vast majority of his career. And
right.
So you put those together and it's like, yeah, this is a franchise changing player. Now, is he going to average 25, 30 a night and be, generating like, is he going to be like the Anthony Edwards of your team where he's like, premier scoring weapon who can drive offense, hyper efficient offense at a championship caliber level? I don't know that he is there yet, but that's part of the reason why I think this needs to be a 2-year process. Like, you need to be getting multiple of these guys, because that's how you put together the highest level team. And so, yeah, I mean, Modest could be a great compliment next to him. Pat could, Kobe could. That's great. And I think he's going to be like a 20+ point per game guy. I just don't think he's going to be like a 30 point per game guy. So how do you also put him in a position to succeed by bringing in even more talent that can help him get better and play alongside him and, take off some of that offensive burden to put him in the best position to succeed. So I think this needs to be a multi-year process, but I just think Cooper Flagg is like the kind of guy. I don't think he's Wembanyama. but I think he's probably like in the same caliber as, like a Zion, ahead of Paolo Banchero and Chet Holmgren, ahead of, Markelle Fultz and Ben Simmons, maybe
Right.
some of these other number one prospects from years past.
And, Givony made note of that, the defensive ability at already such a young age in his write-up, saying, one of Cooper Flagg, one of the best teenage defenders you'll ever see, with a combination of exceptional intensity, instincts, and explosiveness. When you're talking about roster fits and what the Bulls need, they still need their superstar player to build around. They don't have it on their current roster. Y'all out there in Bulls Nation might feel differently and feel optimistic about Kobe turning into that player or Modest turning into that player. But in my opinion, no, they need that guy. And also mentioning, hey, he can make some leaps just if he, knock on wood, has a healthy season with Duke and gets a lot of opportunity to grow his game there. He did point out what he sees as his biggest weakness in his game on either end right now being shot creation. So obviously, talking about Bulls roster needs, I feel like the Bulls, especially in DeMar's absence, are a team that's going to maybe struggle at times with shot creation, and we'll have to get creative, and we'll try this up-tempo offense to make their way there. I also did love this. Along with that article that was Givony's Top 100, there was, towards the top of it, a little snippet video of a sit-down that Jonathan Givony did with not only Cooper Flagg, but his head coach at Duke, John Shire. And John Shire, talking about Cooper Flagg and his impressions of the young player so far, said, quote, "To me, the best quality that Cooper has brought is the level of which he competes on a daily basis. He's the same way every time. He doesn't turn it on and off. It's always on," end quote. And sound bites are nice when coaches talking about their players, especially young players working on their games. But maybe some of y'all out there in our audience caught that, because when I heard that quote, my brain immediately went to a different, very blue chip college basketball program, Duke's rival UNC, and something UNC's Roy Williams said about a young Michael Jordan when he arrived at Chapel Hill in The Last Dance, episode 1. MJ's the only guy I've ever seen who had the ability to turn it on and off, and he never freaking turned it off. This is basically almost an identical quote from Cooper Flagg's head coach at Duke.
I thought you were going to say Joakim Noah.
Well,
everyone always knows that Joakim's always on.
My mind went to the same thing, so I'm glad you said it, because I was going to say it if you didn't. Yeah, and it cut right to a highlight tape. It was great.
Yeah,
it was a great scene.
Incredible. We can have a few more thoughts here on Cooper Flagg before we wrap up, but just a reminder, now's the time, if you aren't already, to sign up to become a CHGO diehard. We got people gallivanting out in London, some people joining in on the fun with our CHGO Bears crew. You could have gotten some mighty fine discounts to that and all of the fun events that they have scheduled throughout the week. They're doing a meet and greet and a live show at some pub tomorrow afternoon London time. Also, we've got Bears Cardinals on deck later this season. We're taking a crew over to the desert for that one. You can reserve a spot for the fun on that all-inclusive trip. Diehards get discounts. Of course, Bears home games throughout the entire season, we're throwing tailgates every single Bears home game. You can get diehard discounted tickets to that because they're always a good time. All you can drink, all you can eat. If you get the diehard ticket price on our tailgates, y'all, it's like we're putting money in your pocket and giving you a good time. 20% off every single time you shop at that ALLCITY merch locker, including the newest drop from CHGO Bulls gear, the Forever Rose design, available in both hoodie and t-shirt, available now for pre-order, and a free shirt of your choice when you sign up. So maybe you want that one as your free shirt when you sign up to become a diehard. Access to the Discord lounge for diehards only, one for each of your favorite Chicago teams, and the best of the best when it comes to the reporting and writing from our credentialed journalists here at CHGO, including this guy right here, Will the Goat Gottlieb. Just perks on perks on perks, endless reasons to sign up to become a CHGO diehard. Do it today if you haven't done it already. Shout out to all of you who are already a part of the Cool Kids Club. Come join us. Okay, so anything that surprised you on Givony's freshly updated top 100, Goat? I mentioned a couple of the others, in that top 5, both prospects from Rutgers, Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper. VJ Edgecombe comes in at number 4. You got, what's his name? Cooper Flagg's Duke teammate, Con Knuppel. Is that how you say it? Knuppel coming in at number 6. Drake Powell of UNC at 7. Hugo Gonzalez of Real Madrid coming into sneaking into the top 10 at number 9. UConn's Liam McNeely rounding out the top 10 there. Does this kind of check out with everything that you have been reading and hearing so far in these early projections of the 25 draft class?
Yeah, I would say so. Some people are higher on Kaman Malawach than others. He's the Duke big man, projected 8 by Givony, but I've seen him in the late teens in some cases. Guys like Kasparas Jakashonis, I want to say is how you pronounce it, the Lithuanian point guard who's going to Illinois. He's a guy who I think could be a good riser, and somebody who's like a very good shot creator. I think he's going to be exciting at U of I. Ben Saraf is playing in Ulm. He's just like an electric scorer. I think he's somebody that could be a riser. He was like putting up 40 in a couple of these Euro tournaments. So there's a lot of good players in this draft, but like, again, you're talking about like Liam McNeely, a solid, like versatile role player, 3-and-D guy with good size. Like that's great. But is that why you're tanking this year?
Right.
I would say probably not.
No.
And so again, I think it just drives home this idea that like, I don't even know if Ace Bailey or Dylan Harper or VJ Edgecombe or Nolan Traore, who all could go, who all may have gone number 1 or even number 1 through 5 in this past year's draft, which some people have been saying. I don't know if like 2 through 5 in this draft is like really going to be the guy. Cooper, I think it's fair to say he is going to be the guy. And so again, when that, even if it's just like that small opening, you just got to go for it. I understand not trying to tank last year because maybe you get the same caliber player at 11 that you could have gotten at 1. And like the way that worked out,
it's possible. The Bulls got themselves a steal with Modest at 11.
It's quite possible. Was that the right process? No. Was the result the way that it turned out and potentially could be great for the Bulls? Absolutely. Modest is great. But again, he was not in this last draft. There was not the kind of guy where you sell out to go for the bottom. And in this draft there is. And so to me, it's like as good as some of these guys 2 through 10 could be, to me, like there's still one prize in this draft and you got to go for it.
Right. Which is why, obviously we will be excitedly watching the development of the young guys the Bulls already have in their building playing this upcoming 24-25 season. We're excited to see what we see from them. But simultaneously, whether it's international prospects or guys playing, their year of collegiate ball, as the NBA and college hoop seasons overlap, when interesting things happen with people who are in this 2025 NBA draft class, we will make note of it. We will talk about it because we know that there's plenty of y'all out there in Bulls Nation who have one of your eyes on what's going on and what might be coming around the bend while we all, power through this season together. So thank you for tuning into today's show about where the Bulls project to be wins and losses wise and how it might impact their draft lottery fate this coming spring. Hit that like button if you were joining us on YouTube and you enjoyed today's show. We appreciate it a lot. Make sure you're also subscribed to that CHGO Sports YouTube channel. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place, 5:30 Central with another live episode, making our way to their next preseason game on Saturday night. In the meantime, follow Will_Gottlieb. Read his stuff, allchgo.com. Lot of great reading material from that week of training camp and a great game notes recap from last night's win over the Cavs in preseason. You can follow me, Bulls_Peck. We are CHGO_Bulls. Shout out and thanks to our guy, Kevin Wells, on the controls. Kev, pleasure as always.
Yeah, thanks for having me, boys. Have a great rest of your week.
Likewise, we will see you next time. We will see you tomorrow evening, Bulls Nation. Much love. See you, right. Be good.
We all silly like the mayor.